Most people believe the Roman legions conquered the world. They're wrong. The real weapon of Roman domination wasn't the sword or the shield. It was the water pipe. For centuries, we've seen the aqueducts as magnificent feats of engineering, a gift of clean water from a benevolent empire to its citizens. But that's a carefully crafted illusion. Beneath the graceful arches and the life-giving water, the aqueducts concealed a secret and ruthless financial system. A machine designed to control populations, create immense wealth for the elite, and fund the very empire that built them. This is the story of how a simple water channel became the backbone of Rome's hidden economy. The grand spectacle of a new aqueduct arriving in a city was pure political theatre. An emperor would stand before the roaring crowds, dedicating the structure to the people of Rome, a grand gesture of public generosity. Wealthy senators and aristocrats would fund sections of the aqueduct, a practice known as urgetism or good works. They built baths, fountains, and theatres, all seemingly out of the goodness of their hearts. But this was no charity. It was a cold, calculated investment. Every denarius spent on a public project was an entry in a social and political ledger. It bought influence, secured votes, and placed the donor in the emperor's favor. The aqueduct wasn't a gift. It was the most expensive and effective piece of propaganda ever built, a constant flowing reminder of who held the power. The water was for the people, but the aqueduct was for the powerful. But here's where the illusion starts to crack. While the poor collected their water from public fountains, the rich enjoyed a luxury that came at a steep price. For the right fee, a wealthy Roman could have water piped directly into their villa. This wasn't a simple transaction. It was a state-controlled subscription service. A bronze nozzle, called a calix, was installed to connect a private home to the main water line. The size of that nozzle was meticulously regulated and stamped by imperial authorities. The wider the calix, the more water you received, and the higher the vectigal or water tax you paid. This created a steady, predictable stream of revenue flowing directly into the state treasury. It was a tax on luxury, a monetization of status. In a city of 1 million people, the revenue from these private connections was staggering. The state had effectively turned a basic necessity into a commercial product, and the elite were more than willing to pay for the privilege. Now here's the crazy part. For every Roman aristocrat paying their water tax, there were dozens of others engaged in a massive city-wide conspiracy. An entire black market for water thrived in the sewers and alleys of Rome. This wasn't just a few people stealing a bucket of water. This was industrial-scale fraud. Dishonest plumbers, known as aquarii, would install illegal, unregistered pipes or punctures into the main channels. Some would even install wider calixes than the homeowner was paying for, pocketing the difference. The fraud was so rampant that by the late 1st century AD, the emperor appointed a man named Sextus Julius Frontinus as water commissioner to clean up the mess. What he uncovered was shocking. He found that in some areas, more than half the water was being stolen before it even reached the city. He discovered secret pipes running for miles to illegally irrigate farms and supply unauthorized businesses. This was a criminal underworld built around water, complete with corrupt officials, back alley deals, and a constant cat-and-mouse game between the thieves and the state. The fines for getting caught were ruinous, creating yet another revenue stream for the empire, this one funded by crime itself. The control of water wasn't just about money, it was about raw power. The office of curator aquarum, or the chief water commissioner, was one of the most powerful positions in Rome, often held by ex-consuls and trusted allies of the emperor. This man and his commission didn't just manage pipes, they managed people. They decided who got a private water connection and who didn't. They could reward a political ally with a generous supply or crush an enemy by literally turning off their tap. A senator who fell out of favor might find his villa's fountain mysteriously running dry. A merchant who supported the wrong candidate could see his business's water supply throttled. Imagine the power of controlling the single, most vital resource in a sprawling metropolis. It was the ultimate political lever, a silent weapon used to enforce loyalty and punish dissent among the city's elite. The aqueducts transformed from infrastructure into an instrument of political coercion. But the most sophisticated financial trick the Romans pulled with their aqueducts had nothing to do with selling the water itself. It had to do with the land. The moment an emperor approved the route for a new aqueduct, a secret economic countdown began. The emperor and his inner circle knew, sometimes years or even decades in advance, exactly where the aqueduct would run. They knew which barren fields outside the city were about to become prime real estate, ripe for development into luxurious villas and productive farms. Armed with this insider knowledge, they could buy up vast tracts of worthless land for next to nothing. Once the aqueduct was built and water began to flow, that same land became incredibly valuable overnight. They could then sell it at an astronomical profit or grant it to political allies as a reward. This wasn't just a side benefit. Some historians argue it was a primary motivation for building them in the first place. The aqueduct became a self-funding machine, a state-sponsored real estate scheme where the profits from land speculation could pay for the construction of the project itself. Beyond the villas of the rich and the fountains of the poor, the aqueducts fueled the engine of the Roman economy. The immense volume of water they carried wasn't just for drinking and bathing. It was used to power massive industrial sites. The most famous example is the Barbegal mill complex in southern Gaul, where a single aqueduct drove a cascade of 16 water wheels, grinding enough flour to feed thousands of people. In places like Spain, Roman engineers used a technique called hushing, where an aqueduct would be used to build up a massive reservoir of water that was then unleashed to blast away entire mountainsides in search of gold. This was called ruina montium, the ruin of the mountains. The state controlled access to this industrial water, leasing it out to mill operators and mining corporations. They were effectively taxing industry at its source, taking a cut of every sack of flour and every ounce of gold produced, all thanks to their mastery of water. Ultimately, the money, the power, and the control all served one final purpose: to glorify the emperor. Aqueducts were the ultimate status symbols. They were colossal structures, visible for miles, marching across the landscape as an undeniable statement of Roman power and technological supremacy. When an emperor completed an aqueduct, he would have his name and titles carved into it in massive letters for all to see. He would mint coins celebrating the achievement, spreading his image and his accomplishment across the entire empire. This was a sophisticated branding campaign. The aqueduct was tangible proof of the emperor's ability to provide for his people, to tame nature, and to command resources on an unimaginable scale. The hidden financial system, the water taxes, the land deals, the industrial fees, all flowed back to fund this grand imperial message. The water was the medium, but the message was power. So the next time you see a picture of a Roman aqueduct, don't just see a beautiful relic of the ancient world. See it for what it truly was: a complex financial instrument, a tool of political control, and a brilliant piece of propaganda, all disguised as a public utility. It reveals a side of the Romans we often ignore, not just as soldiers and builders, but as ruthless accountants and master manipulators. It raises a chilling question. When we look at the mega projects of our own time, the towering skyscrapers, the sprawling transit systems, are we only seeing the surface? Or are there hidden systems at play? Financial and political machines humming just beneath the concrete and steel, shaping our world in ways we can't even begin to imagine.